There is a scene in the Islands miniseries, the 8th season arc that aired in January and February of 2017, where Finn finally meets his mother. After 5 seasons of mystery, after the show spent years dropping hints and withholding answers and making the audience wait, we get the moment. Finn and Minerva Campbell reunited. She's not a person anymore. Exactly. She uploaded her consciousness to the Islands network after a pandemic wiped out most of the helpers. She exists as a distributed digital intelligence spread across hundreds of robots, projected on screens, carrying on the work of taking care of people in the only form left available to her. And Finn, standing there, looking at his mother's face on a screen, this boy who has been the last human in his whole life, learns the shape of the family he never got to have. And here's what gets me about that scene. It's genuinely beautiful. Sharon Horgan voices Minerva, and the performance is warm and terrified and desperate in exactly the right proportions. Finn shares his memories with her. She sees what made him into. She lets him go. It's one of the most emotionally complete moments the show ever produced. But here's what doesn't get resolved. Here's what the show just doesn't tell you. What happened to Finn's mother after that? Not in the sense of the technical answer. She's a digital entity on Founders Island. She's maintaining the human community there. The humans were apparently encouraged to make their way to in the finale's epilogue. But what about the interior questions? What happened between Minerva and Martin? What does she know about what he became? Did she ever find out that her son lost his arm reaching for his father? Did she know that Martin eventually dissolved into cosmic energy? That he took the purple comet's offer and became something beyond human and beyond the people she devoted her life to protecting? The show gives you the reunion. It doesn't give you the aftermath. And I've been thinking about that for years. Welcome to the Enchiridion. Tonight we're going through every genuine mystery that Adventure Time left open when the credits rolled on. Come along with me. Not theories, not speculation dressed up as fact. The actual, confirmed, documented mysteries. The questions the show raised deliberately, built toward, gave you just enough information to care about, and then didn't answer. We're spending all night with the things that left unexplained, and we're going to talk about why some of those unexplained things might be the most honest thing the show ever did. So get comfortable. If you're watching this late at night, good. This is exactly the kind of content that's designed for those hours. There's something about unsolved mysteries that feels right at 2 a.m. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It genuinely helps us keep making these. We're starting with Martin Mertens, because Martin Mertens is the mystery that haunts the whole show. He's the mystery dressed up as a character. He's the absence that has a face. By the time Escape from the Citadel aired, the Season 6 premiere on April 21st, 2014, storyboarded by Tom Herpick and Steve Wolfhard, we'd been waiting years to meet Finn's father. The show had been building to it since Billy told Finn in Billy's bucket list that his father was alive, trapped in the Crystal Citadel. And then we got Martin, voiced by Stephen Root, calling Finn Flynn, doesn't remember the name, doesn't remember the abandonment, says things like, "Maybe you left me," when Finn presses for answers. And here is the mystery at the center of Martin Mertens that the show never resolved. What did he actually do? The Citadel was a prison for cosmic criminals. Prismo explains this in Wake Up, the episode just before Escape from the Citadel, also aired April 21st, that the prisoners there committed crimes so severe that existing within the universe was dangerous. These weren't people who robbed convenience stores. These were beings who, by their nature, posed a threat to existence itself. Martin Mertens was in there, a human man, a con man, and a hider from Founders Island, who charmed people and ran from consequences. What did he do that was cosmically criminal? The show gives you fragments in the Islands miniseries. In Min and Marty, the 6th part of Islands, aired February 1st, 2017, we learn that Martin was a hider, someone who concealed people from the authorities on the island, that he and Minerva fell in love, that men from his past caught up with him, forced him to flee with infant Finn, that he was separated from the baby when fighting the Guardian at the island's boundary. He damaged his head in that fight. The Martin we meet in Escape from the Citadel appears to have genuine memory problems that might be neurological rather than characterological, but none of that is cosmically criminal. Being a con man who got into trouble with shady people on an island doesn't land you in a prison designed for beings that threaten existence itself. There's a gap between Martin Mertens, the hider, who ran from the island, and Martin Mertens, the Citadel prisoner. The show never fills that gap. I've rewatched the Islands miniseries probably 4 or 5 times, building this script, and the gap is real. It's not something I'm inventing. The showrunner, Adam Muto, has acknowledged in various interviews that Martin's full backstory was intentionally left mysterious. It was a creative choice, not an oversight. They decided that Martin's specific crime was better left unspecified, that the ambiguity served something in his character that a clean answer would have undermined. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's the honest creative position. Martin is defined by his absence and his evasions. Making his crime specific and concrete would have given him a kind of coherence that the show was arguing he doesn't deserve. He doesn't get a satisfying backstory because his whole existence in Finn's life was the opposite of satisfying, but it means the question never goes away. What did Martin Mertens do? And here's the thing that makes this mystery particularly potent. When Martin takes the Purple Comet's offer at the end of The Comet, the Season 6 finale that aired June 5th, 2015, and dissolves into cosmic energy and leaves forever, he leaves without answering. Finn finally reaches some peace with it. "I get it now," he says, or something to that effect, understanding that Martin's departure is just the final expression of who he's always been. But the understanding is emotional, not informational. Finn makes peace with not knowing. The show makes peace with not knowing, and we're left with not knowing. There's something genuinely moving about that, if you let it be. Most of the time, when you want to understand a parent who failed you, you don't get an explanation. You just get the fact of the failure, and you have to construct a relationship with it. Martin Mertens is, in the most specific and uncomfortable sense, the show's portrait of how much of parental failure stays permanently mysterious. But it's also one of the great unsolved mysteries of U, because the Citadel wasn't an ordinary prison, and Martin wasn't an ordinary criminal, and whatever he did or was or became in that gap is still sitting there in the show's unresolved space. Let me talk about the Enchiridion, because the Enchiridion is the mystery hiding in plain sight. It's the thing that was there from the very beginning, literally the very first episode produced, the Enchiridion, that aired April 19th, 2010, written and storyboarded by Pendleton Ward, Patrick McHale, and Adam Muto. And by the time the show ended, The most important question about it was still open. Who wrote it? The Enchiridion is described as an ancient book with codes of conduct, guidelines, and other helpful information for heroes. The show's canon tells us that Simon Petrikov and Betty Groff found it during an archaeological dig in the Hindu Kush mountain range in Pakistan before the Mushroom War. As revealed in a newspaper clipping in I Remember You, Simon donated it to a museum. After the war, it ended up at Mount Cragdor in the hands of Keeper, guarded by Manish Man the Minotaur. But here's the question that keeps nagging at me. The book is ancient. Pre-Mushroom War ancient. It's described as existing for heroes of Ooh before Ooh was even called Ooh, before the landscape that Finn and Jake traverse existed, and the book has magical properties that shouldn't just emerge from a hero's handbook. The ability to access all dimensions of the multiverse when the correct gems are inserted. That's not a feature you'd design into a hero's guidebook unless whoever wrote it knew about the multiverse. Who knew about the multiverse before the Mushroom War, before portal technology existed, before the catalyst comets, and the cosmic architecture of the show became legible? The show never answers this. The Enchiridion's origin is given to us in terms of discovery. Simon found it. Here's where, here's when, but not creation. Someone wrote the thing. Someone designed its chapters on how to kiss a princess. Alongside its hidden function as a dimensional key, someone put both of those things in the same book. Think about that for a second. The Enchiridion has a chapter on how to kiss a princess. It also has the functional capacity to tear open the multiverse. That's an extraordinarily specific combination of mundane and cosmic knowledge in a single artifact. Whoever created it understood heroism at the intimate, practical level of interpersonal relationships, and also at the level of cosmic architecture. The show gestures toward this being ancient knowledge, pre-war wisdom, something that existed in Ooh's world before the bombs fell. But ancient to Adventure Time's timeline is interesting because we know from Evergreen, Season 6, Episode 26, that the world has been shaped by forces going back to the Cretaceous. Whoever wrote the Enchiridion might have known about those forces, might have built the book for a purpose that extended well beyond hero training. We just don't know. The book exists. It was found. It was important. And whoever made it remains completely unidentified. Okay, so we need to stop here for a moment, because I realize I could spend hours just cataloguing mysteries without giving them their proper weight. Some of these mysteries feel like administrative oversights, things the show forgot to address. Some of them feel like deliberate creative choices, spaces the show left open because it was more honest to leave them open. And some of them feel like the show got to the edge of something and stepped back because the answer would have been too big to contain in 11 minutes. The question about Golb's true nature is in that third category. Golb is the closest thing Adventure Time has to an ultimate cosmic truth, and the show never quite tells you what that truth is. We know he's described as the embodiment of chaos and discord. We know he's powerful enough that even Prismo, the reality-warping, wish-granting entity who can alter the fabric of existence, couldn't retrieve Magic Man's wife Margles from Golb's grasp. We know the Lich was his last scholar, which implies Golb has something worth studying, some philosophy or principle or pattern that can be learned and followed. We know his stomach reverts things to their essential forms, which is how Simon gets restored to himself in the finale. But what is Golb? not what he does, what he is. Is he a god? The show uses the language of deity, but the show also has multiple entities that function as gods. Prismo, Grobgob, Globgrod, the cosmic owl, and none of them are quite equivalent to each other. Is Golb older than the universe? The Lich described himself in Gold Stars, Season 6, Episode 34, as having existed before matter and time, as being from a category of beings that predates everything. The Lich was Golb's scholar. If the student is pre-universe, what does that make the teacher? Is Golb the universe's death principle, its reset mechanism, a force that exists to periodically clear creation and allow something new to emerge? The show's treatment of Golb as discord suggests he's something more like entropy, not motivated malice, just the cosmic principle that makes things fall apart, which would make him less a villain and more a force of nature that has something like a will. Betty Groff figured out how to approach GOLB. She made a wish using the crown's restored wish-granting function, and her truest wish, to protect Simon, caused her to merge with Golb. Rather than simply wishing him away, she became Golbetty, and Golbetty, as we saw in the Fiona and Cake specials, is a fundamentally different entity than GOLB alone, more capable of communication, more directed. The Betty component gives Golb something like purpose, but the underlying question, what was Golb before Betty? What is the nature of the chaos entity at the center of everything, remains open. Adam Muto and the team built Golb as the show's ultimate cosmic unknown. Its inexplicability is the point. A fully explained GOLB would have been a smaller, less frightening thing, and yet the choice to leave it open means that the most powerful entity in Adventure Time's cosmology remains permanently mysterious, which is either the most honest thing the show could have done or the most frustrating, depending on your mood. If you've made it this far and you're starting to feel the weight of these questions accumulating, good, that's the right response. And if you're finding this channel for the first time, please subscribe. It really does matter for whether we keep making videos like this one. Let me talk about Betty's story, because Betty Groff might be the most tragic figure in the entire show, and parts of her story remain genuinely unresolved, even after the Fiona and Cake specials closed certain doors. The broad strokes. Betty was Simon's fiancée before the Mushroom War. Simon found the Ice Crown, started losing himself. Betty eventually left. She left him a note and disappeared. Simon spent 1,000 years as the Ice King with no memory of her. In Betty, Season 5, Episode 48, aired March 17th, 2014, Betty jumps through a time portal created when Simon briefly regained his sanity after Bella Noche destroyed the crown's magic. She arrives in present-day U and immediately devotes herself to finding a cure. She spends seasons going increasingly mad in pursuit of this goal. Magic corrupts her the same way the crown corrupted Simon, which is one of the most painful pieces of dramatic irony in the show. The woman trying to cure the man corrupted by magic gets corrupted by magic in her attempts to cure him. In the finale, Betty merges with Golb and becomes Golbetty. Simon is restored to himself. Betty sacrifices her individuality to save the person she loves. And in the Fiona and Cake series, we get the full emotional accounting of that sacrifice, the bittersweet farewell, Simon's acknowledgement of his own role in the tragedy, Betty finally getting to board the bus she never took. That story feels complete. It has closure, but here's the mystery that remains. What did Betty know about the crown before Simon found it? The Adventure Time wiki notes that Betty helped Simon find the Enchiridion in Pakistan. She was part of that expedition. After they found the book, Betty wanted to leave. She'd been planning a trip to the Australian outback, but Simon confessing his feelings made her stay. She wanted him to have full credit for the discovery, so she kept her role quiet. Betty was a scholar. She was clearly someone who studied ancient artifacts alongside Simon. When Simon first found the crown and put it on, Betty witnessed what happened. She saw the transformation begin. She saw the early stages of the corruption. The question is, did Betty know anything about the crown before Simon found it? Did she have scholarly knowledge of what it was? Its origins in Evergreen's magic, its curse, its history that she didn't share. The show implies she understood that the crown was supernatural immediately, but whether she had prior knowledge of its specific history is never addressed. And the deeper version of that question, if Betty knew, even partially, what the crown was, did her decision to stay in U rather than go to the outback change everything? Not in a way where she deserves blame, not at all, but in the specific tragic sense that a different choice at a single moment reshapes everything that follows. Betty staying when she was going to leave is the event that ties her to Simon's fate, and we don't fully know what she knew when she made that choice. Now let me tell you about the mystery that's closer to home, the one that lives in the show's most emotionally resonant territory. What is Jake? I know that sounds like a strange question. Jake is the magical dog. Jake is Finn's best friend. Jake can stretch and compress his body into any shape, grow to enormous size, shrink to tiny, take on the properties of any material he needs. His powers are explained as magical. His parents Joshua and Margaret adopted him. He has an alien ancestry on his father's side. Joshua was affected by a bite from a rainicorn during a mission, and that bite had effects that eventually produced Jake. Actually, let me be more specific. In Joshua and Margaret Investigations, Season 6, Episode 21, aired November 20th, 2014, we learn that Joshua was bitten by a monster that left an alien creature growing inside his forehead lump. Margaret lanced the lump, and the alien creature emerged, and then something happened with Joshua's DNA that resulted in Jake. The specifics of the transformation are genuinely unclear. Jake's shape-shifting powers have always been attributed to his alien ancestry on Joshua's side. The rainicorn connection on his maternal grandmother's side might also contribute. But here's what's never been explained. The scope of Jake's powers exceeds what magical usually means in U. Jake doesn't just stretch, he can become other materials. He can form complex structures. In certain episodes, his powers seem to operate at a scale that should be impossible for a biological entity. When Jake was briefly able to stretch to truly enormous sizes in early seasons, the show itself seemed unsure how to handle the upper limits. The alien DNA explanation has always felt slightly thin because the alien creature from Joshua's lump wasn't shown to have these specific powers. It was bizarre and otherworldly, yes, but we don't actually know enough about that creature's nature to understand what it contributed to Jake's specific capability set. And there's a deeper question layered under this. In Together Again, the 2021 Distant Lands special, we see Jake in the afterlife, and his soul is assigned to a significantly elevated dead world compared to Finn's. Jake's spiritual status appears to be substantially higher than that of a normal person. The afterlife system in Adventure Time reflects something about the nature and significance of the being, not just their moral choices. Jake's elevated placement suggests something about what he is that goes beyond his surface characterization as a funny dog with stretchy powers. What Jake actually is at the soul level, whether he's something unusual in the show's cosmological architecture, whether the alien DNA means something more significant than the show ever specified, remains genuinely open. The show loves Jake too much to reduce him to a concept, but the question of his true nature hovers at the edge of what the show explains. Let me talk about the pillow world, because the pillow world is the mystery that lives closest to the emotional bottom of the iceberg. Puhoi, Season 5, Episode 16, aired April 8th, 2013, is the episode where Finn enters Jake's pillow fort and falls through a portal to a world made entirely of pillows. He marries a woman named Rosalinen. They have 2 children, Jay and Bonnie. Finn grows old in the pillow world, loses the ability to access the portal home, accepts his life there, grows old, and dies. His spirit bounces off Golb's tongue, a detail confirmed by the show's cosmological architecture that places Golb in the transition mechanism between worlds and returns to his 12-year-old body in Jake's pillow fort, with no memory of the life he just lived. The mystery, the pillow world, is real. It's not a dream. It's confirmed as an actual location in Adventure Time's cosmology, accessible through Jake's pillow fort. Rosalinen is real. Jay and Bonnie are real. The show built an entire family for Finn in a world made of pillows, and then the show ended. The finale happened. The treehouse was destroyed. Whatever portal previously existed to the pillow world through the pillow fort was presumably destroyed with it. What happened to Rosalinen after Finn died? What happened to Jay and Bonnie? They raised a child who aged to an old man and died in front of them, and whose body then apparently vanished. They have no idea that somewhere in a treehouse in U, their father was a 12-year-old boy who woke up one morning with no memory of them. The show never goes back. The pillow world appears once. Those people, if you accept the show's metaphysics, which establishes the pillow world as real, are still there. They had a life with Finn. They lost him. They're living with whatever that meant. The reason this mystery hits differently from the others isn't that it's cosmologically important or that it connects to the show's major mythology. It's that it's specific and human. It's about people who loved someone and then the person was gone without any of the understanding that should accompany a loss like that. It's about grief without context. And the show, to its credit, doesn't pretend this is resolved. It just moves on because Finn moves on, because the pillow fort is just a pillow fort and the show is still happening. But in the pillow world, nothing moved on. They're still there. Now let me give you the mystery that I actually think is the most philosophically rich one the show left open, the one that gets at the heart of what Adventure Time was trying to say about the nature of identity and transformation. What would Simon and Betty have looked like if the crown had never happened? I don't mean this as a fan fiction question. I mean it as a genuine narrative inquiry. The show spent enormous energy on who Simon and Marceline became because of the crown. It devoted its most beloved episode, I Remember You, Season 4, Episode 25, aired October 15th, 2012, written and storyboarded by Cole Sanchez and Rebecca Sugar, with a 9.7 on IMDb and 2.535 million viewers, to the tragedy of what the Crown took from Simon, and it spent the Fiona and Cake specials giving us the full accounting of the Betty side of that tragedy. But we get glimpses of who Simon was before, a warm, slightly nerdy archaeologist, someone who genuinely lit up when he discovered things, someone who fell in love with Betty in a way that was awkward and genuine and whole, someone who, in the flashbacks in Simon and Marcy, Season 5, Episode 14, sang ridiculous songs to a traumatized little girl in the ruins of the world because it was the only thing he could do for her. That Simon, the full Simon, not the fragments, is permanently lost. What the Crown took from him was not just his sanity. It was the version of himself that could have had the relationship with Betty that both of them apparently wanted. The version that could have been a full presence in Marceline's life, rather than a diminishing presence and then an absence. In the Fiona and Cake series, Simon gets to see a version of his future that could have been different. He gets some closure. The show gives him that. But the mystery of who Simon would have been, who Betty and Simon together would have become, remains permanently speculative because the Crown made it impossible. And I think that's one of the show's most honest mysteries. Not every question about who people would have been is answerable. The Crown happened. That's the fact. Everything that Simon could have been is counterfactual. The show doesn't pretend otherwise. What it does, though, is make you feel the weight of the counterfactual, which is a different and more sophisticated thing than answering the question. Let me shift gears to a mystery that's less emotionally charged and more structurally strange. The origin of Princess Bubblegum's power over the Candy People. PB created the Candy People. This is established canon. She is a scientist queen who built a civilization from living candy biomass and has been running it for somewhere between hundreds and 1,000 years. The specific mechanics of how she created them, the nature of the connection she maintains to them, and the full extent of what that connection allows her to do, these remain partially unspecified. We know she can genetically modify them. We know that in certain episodes, she demonstrates biological influence over them that suggests more than just political authority. We know that in Goliad, Season 4, Episode 24, she creates a psychic heir from her own biological material, and that heir develops in terrifying directions. We know from various episodes that PB has kept secrets from the Candy People that would fundamentally alter their understanding of their relationship to her. The deepest version of this mystery. Does PB know the full extent of what her creation of the Candy People means ethically? Does she know what she gave up in terms of her own integrity as someone who believes in science and understanding by creating a population and then governing it? The show raises this question through episodes like The Suitor and Goliad and Nemesis without ever fully resolving it. I think the honest answer is that PB is aware of the ethical complications and has chosen to live with them because the alternative, acknowledging the full weight of what it means to create the people you govern, would make governance impossible. That's a very adult and very dark position for a character in a children's show to occupy. And the show credits the audience with being able to hold it without a clean resolution, but it means the ethical accounting of the Candy Kingdom's founding remains genuinely open, which might be appropriate. The ethical questions around how civilizations come to be are never cleanly resolved in the real world either. Subscribe if you haven't. This is the kind of video that takes months to put together, and it genuinely matters that people find it. We're going to keep going. Here's one that I think about often and don't hear discussed much. What happened to the human community on Founders Island after the finale? In Come Along With Me, the series finale, aired September 3rd, 2018, the epilogue shows the humans apparently beginning to venture back to U. They're seen approaching by boat, with Minerva projected on a large screen. Finn and Jake spot them briefly, and it's framed as the beginning of a new era for the human race's presence in the world. In the Simon Petrikov Distant Lands special, we learn that this eventually resulted in a floating human city with extremely advanced technology existing in U. The humans came back. They built something remarkable, but the mystery is in the gap. How did Minerva, a digital consciousness without a physical form, spread across robots on an island she'd devoted her entire existence to protecting, make the decision to let her people go? How did the community that had been isolated for 1,000 years navigate the transition from their protected bubble to the chaotic, magical, post-apocalyptic world of U? What happened to the relationship between Finn and Minerva in the years between the finale and the floating city? Did Finn ever get to feel what it meant to have a mother who was present in his life? Not just present on a screen during a VR goodbye, but genuinely woven into his daily existence. The finale gives you the first movement of that possible relationship. The Simon Petrikov special gives you the endpoint, a floating human city, humans integrated into U. The in-between is invisible. There's also the question of the other humans Finn met on the islands. Susan Strong, who regained her memories and her speech and her full identity during the island's arc. Frida, who decided to go off and have her own adventures with Susan. What happened to them? The show gives them a clear trajectory going forward, but their eventual fates are left open. Susan Strong in particular feels like a character who was building towards something the show never fully arrived at. And here's something I find genuinely puzzling when I think about it carefully. The Guardian, the enormous automated machine that protected Founders Island, keeping everything in and everything out. Martin fought it trying to escape with baby Finn, and apparently gave it such severe damage that it became malfunctioning. Jake disabled it during the island's arc. It was told to rest now in something that functioned as a mercy. What was the Guardian before it became a Guardian? Who built it? Why was it built so completely that its destruction was practically a death? The show treats it with something approaching reverence in those final moments, like something important was being acknowledged, even if we don't have the language for what it is. The Guardian's origin is an unsolved mystery that doesn't get a lot of attention in fan discussions, but it sits there in the island's canon as something unexplained, and unexplained in ways that feel deliberate. Let me talk about the Lich's scholars, because this is the mystery that opens up the biggest cosmological territory. The Lich identifies himself in Gold Stars, Season 6, Episode 34, as having existed before the universe, as belonging to a category of beings from before time and matter. He describes himself as a scholar of Golby, Golb's last scholar. That phrase implies there were others. The show never tells us about the other scholars. Who were they? What did they study? What became of them? Were they entities like the Lich, beings of vast destructive power, who devoted themselves to understanding and serving Golb's principle of chaos? Or were they something different, beings who approached Golb from other angles, who studied it for different purposes? The concept of Golb having scholars implies something remarkable, that the entity of pure chaos has something that can be studied, that it has patterns, principles, or tendencies coherent enough to be learned. Whatever the scholars discovered about Golb is knowledge that died with all but the Lich, who then became Sweet Pea, who carries that knowledge in a form the infant version of him can't fully access. The Lich's scholarship is implied to be one of the reasons he's so powerful and so resistant to defeat. He understands Golb's principle at a level that makes him aligned with it in a way that other entities simply aren't. But what did the other scholars understand? What did their study reveal? What happened to them? These are genuine mysteries, without even a fragment of an answer. There's another layer here that I want to sit with for a moment. The Lich in Gold Stars makes these claims about his pre-universe origin while inhabiting the body of a giant baby, Sweet Pea, the transformed Lich, who the Guardian Blood turned into an infant version of himself, and who the elderly tree trunks and Mr. Pig are raising. That juxtaposition, the ancient pre-universe entity of extinction making cosmic claims from the body of a toddler, is one of the show's most characteristic moments of hiding enormous stakes inside something that looks absurd. And what Sweet Pea eventually becomes is also a mystery. The show gives us Sweet Pea as a child, as an adolescent, as something that's still developing. The Lich's nature hasn't been eliminated. It's been paused, or transformed, or redirected. Who is Sweet Pea when he reaches adulthood? What's the relationship between the child who likes school and the entity that wanted to end all life? The show set up a question it never answered, and I genuinely don't know if it was planning to answer it and ran out of time, or if the open-endedness is the answer, that Sweet Pea's future is genuinely undetermined, that who he becomes depends on who he chooses to be, that the entity of extinction can be redirected toward life by enough love and ordinary experience. If that's the argument, it's a beautiful one. It just means the question remains open. Okay, here's one that I want to talk about specifically because it's close to home for a lot of people who fell in love with this show. The fully unresolved question of what happened in the years between the series finale and Obsidian. Obsidian, the Distant Lands special that aired in 2020, takes place an unspecified number of years after the main series. Finn is visibly older. Jake is apparently dead, memorialized in the tattoo on adult Finn's chest. Marceline and PB have the relationship they clearly always should have had. The world of Ooh has changed, but those years, the years between the finale and the beginning of adult Finn's life, are invisible. We don't know what happened to Finn between the end of his childhood adventures and the beginning of the phase of his life Obsidian shows us. We don't know how Jake died, when he died, what those final years together looked like. We don't know how Finn processed the death of his best friend and brother. We don't know who Finn became in the years before Obsidian and Together Again show us his adult self. Together Again eventually gives us the framework. Finn died of old age. He and Jake were separated in death and then reunited. They chose to reincarnate together, but the life itself, the actual texture of adult Finn's existence, remains largely invisible. There are hints, there are implications, but the years aren't shown. I want to make an argument about why this is actually one of the show's most honest choices, even though it's also genuinely frustrating. Finn's life after the show ended is yours to imagine. That's not a cop-out. That's the show acknowledging that Finn's story, the part that matters most to you as someone who grew up watching it, is the part that belongs to your imagination. The show gave you a person. The person continued to exist after the camera stopped. What happened to that person in the years you didn't see is a question that you get to answer in whatever way feels most true to what Finn was to you. That's either generous or avoidant, depending on your disposition. I go back and forth. When I'm feeling charitable, it's generous. When I'm at 2 a.m. wishing I knew what adult Finn's daily life looked like, it's avoidant. There's a related mystery that's smaller and more specific. What happened to Flame Princess in the years between the finale and the specials? She was a major character across several seasons, particularly the season 5 arc around Finn's relationship with her. She became the ruler of the Fire Kingdom in her own right. The show gave her a trajectory toward genuine independence and authority that felt like the beginning of something substantial. And then she's barely present in the specials. She's there in the background of certain moments. But the character, who was one of the most emotionally rich figures in the show's middle period, essentially disappears from its final chapter. Where is she in adult Finn's life? Did their relationship find any new form after the painful end of their romance? Did Finn ever have the mature understanding of what happened between them that he clearly couldn't have had as a teenage boy? The show gives you enough to care about Flame Princess as a person. It doesn't give you enough of what came next. Let me now talk about the mystery that might be the show's most deliberately open one, because some of the questions we've been discussing feel like things the show didn't get to. This one feels like a thing the show chose not to answer, because the choice to leave it open was the right creative decision. What is the nature of the Catalyst Comet cycle, and what does it mean that Finn is a reincarnation of one? We know the basics from Evergreen, Season 6, Episode 26, and The Comet, the Season 6 finale. Catalyst comets strike the Earth approximately every 1,000 years. Each comet brings an agent of change. The first comets are associated with primal forces. The green comet that would have caused mass extinction in the Cretaceous. The blue comet that brought life to the world. Others across deep time. The Lich's emergence is tied to a comet. Finn is a reincarnation of one of the comets. Specifically, the Vault in Season 5 establishes through Finn's memories that one of his past lives was a comet incarnation. The purple comet in the finale tells Finn that it has embodied all that is good and evil, that it contains Finn and the Lich as co-incarnations, which is how the show establishes them as cosmic counterparts. The life principle and the death principle sharing the same cosmic origin, but the mechanics of this are genuinely unclear. What determines when a comet incarnates as something? Is it random? Is it purposeful? Is there a will behind the comet cycle? Or is it more like a natural phenomenon, periodic cosmic events that simply happen to have enormous consequences? The show gestures at universal intention in The Comet, the idea that things happen because the universe fated them, without fully committing to what that means. And there's a question about Finn specifically that I've never heard anyone answer satisfactorily. If Finn is a reincarnation of a catalyst comet, and the comets bring change when they strike the Earth, what change did Finn the human bring? The comet that preceded Finn's human existence apparently led to his incarnation as a heroic person in the post-Mushroom War world. The heroism principle was placed in a human body. Why? What was the change that heroism was supposed to bring? The show's answer seems to be that Finn himself is the change, that having a genuinely good person who couldn't not help people in a world rebuilding after apocalypse is the intervention that the comet cycle was producing. Heroism as a force of cosmic restoration. That's a beautiful reading, but it's a reading, not a confirmed answer. The show leaves you to assemble it from pieces rather than stating it plainly, which is either poetic or evasive. And after 7 years of thinking about it, I still can't decide which one feels more right. There's one more mystery I want to spend real time with before we start bringing this together, because I think it's the one that points most directly at what the show was actually doing with all its unresolved questions. The mystery of what U becomes after the finale. We get glimpses. The Distant Lands specials show us fragments. A floating human city with advanced technology. The magical augmentations to the Candy Kingdom, visible in Together Again, the world that Shermie and Beth inhabit in the flash forward at the end of Come Along With Me. That world is recognizable but different. Something changed in the years after the finale. But the shape of that change, the process by which U went from the world of the main series to the world of the specials, is largely invisible. We don't see the humans integrating. We don't see the Candy Kingdom developing its magical augmentations. We don't see what happened to the political landscape after the Great Gum War. We don't see whether Gumbald's defeat and the Candy People's subsequent choices had lasting effects on the kingdom's government. What we get is the end point of these changes, not the process. And the end point is beautiful. The world feels like it's in a better place, like the future glimpsed in the finale's flash forward is genuinely hopeful. But the path from here to there is one of the great gaps in the show's final chapter. I want to make an argument here that I think is important for understanding what Adventure Time was doing with all of its unresolved mysteries. The show's central thesis, and I've come back to this in my head for years, is that the world is bigger than any story you can tell about it. U is always larger than what the camera can see. The Mushroom War happened, and the show gives you pieces of it, but deliberately withholds the complete picture, because the complete picture would be too enormous and too specific to hold the mythic quality the show needs the war to have. Martin Mertens had a cosmic crime, and the show gives you the human context for it, but withholds the specific transgression, because the specific transgression would reduce Martin to a comprehensible villain rather than the incomprehensible absence he actually is in Finn's life. Rosalind and Jay and Bonnie are in the pillow world, because the pillow world is real in U's metaphysics, and things that are real continue to exist even when the camera isn't on them. The show's willingness to let them exist off camera, to let Finn's life in the pillow world have happened and have consequences even though the consequences are invisible, is a form of creative honesty about the way that people we love continue to exist after we lose them. The Enchiridion was written by someone because everything that exists was made by someone or something, and the fact that we don't know who made it doesn't make it less real or less meaningful. Some of history is genuinely invisible. Every unsolved mystery in Adventure Time is the show saying the world doesn't explain itself for your convenience. People disappear without explanation. Artifacts have origins that are lost to time. Cosmic entities operate according to principles we can't fully access. Parents fail to tell you what you need to know and then become unavailable to ask. The people you love in unexpected places continue their lives after you've moved on. And this is the point where the mystery turns around and faces you, because if the show's unsolved mysteries are honest about the nature of the world, and I believe they are, then the thing they're really talking about is your experience of the world. You have unsolved mysteries in your own life, people you love who never explained themselves completely, relationships that ended before they were resolved, things about your own history that you can't access, the people your parents were before you existed, the choices they made that shaped you before you were conscious of being shaped, the gaps in their stories that you've been trying to fill with inference and imagination ever since you were old enough to notice they were gaps. Adventure Time, with all its unsolved mysteries about cosmic entities and ancient books and fathers who couldn't remember their children's names, is actually talking about this. It's talking about the specific human experience of living inside a story that is larger than what you can see, of loving people who remain partially mysterious to you, of inhabiting a world that refuses to explain itself completely. The mysteries of ooh are the mysteries of being alive. And maybe, the fact that they're not resolved is the most accurate thing the show ever said about what it means to exist. There's a particular scene I keep returning to when I think about all of this. Not a famous scene, not one that gets talked about much. It's in Min and Marty, February 1st, 2017, after Martin fights the Guardian to protect Finn and is severely injured. The show does something quiet. It shows Minerva waiting after Martin disappeared with baby Finn, after the Guardian was apparently defeated and Martin didn't come back. Minerva waited, not knowing what had happened to her family, not knowing if they were alive, not knowing if she would ever find out. The show doesn't linger on this, it moves forward, but that image, Minerva waiting in a world that has no information for her, is, I think, the purest expression of what all these mysteries actually mean. Someone who loves a person and has no access to what happened to them, who has to live with the not knowing. That's the unsolved mystery at the heart of Adventure Time. Not Martin's crime, not the Enchiridian's authorship, not Golb's nature. The experience of loving people who become mysteries to you and having to build a life inside that not knowing. The show was always honest about that, even when it wasn't honest about everything else. We've been here a long time tonight, and I want to close with something that feels right, rather than something that feels conclusive, because nothing about these mysteries is conclusive. That's the whole point. The land of Ooh is still out there. In the distant future shown in Come Along With Me, Shermie and Beth are having adventures in its ruins and its colours. Whatever they encounter, whatever mysteries they carry with them from the world that Finn and Jake built and lived and left, those mysteries are part of the landscape they're navigating. The unsolved questions don't disappear when the heroes do. They become the texture of the world. The things that went unexplained become the atmosphere in which the next generation lives. Martin Mertens's cosmic crime is somewhere in the fabric of a universe that Jake and Finn's spiritual descendants are running through. The Enchiridion was written by someone whose identity is lost in a history that Shermie and Beth can't access. Rosalind and Jay and Bonnie are in a pillow world that still exists somewhere, probably in the cosmological architecture of a place where everything that ever was continues to be, and Minerva Campbell is still out there, digital, distributed, taking care of people in the only form she has left, still not knowing, in whatever sense a digital consciousness cannot know, exactly what happened to Martin, still carrying whatever she thinks and feels about the fact that her son grew up without her, in a world she'd been trained to fear, and became someone genuinely extraordinary. The mysteries don't resolve, they settle into the landscape and become part of it, and I think that's okay. I think that's what the show was always saying. Not that the questions don't matter, they do, but that living with questions, loving things that remain partially mysterious to you, moving forward without complete information, making a home in the in-between, is what being alive actually looks like. Adventure Time knew that, even when it frustrated us by not answering, especially then. Thank you for spending tonight with me. This is the kind of video I make because I genuinely can't stop thinking about this show, and I hope some of that came through. If you're watching this late at night and these questions are keeping you company in the dark, good, you're in the right place. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment with the mystery you think about most. And if you can't sleep, well, that's what the next video is for. Good night. I want to go back to the Enchiridion mystery and sit with it longer because I think I moved through it too quickly and it deserves more. The Enchiridion is the thing that ties the show's beginning to its ending in ways that I don't think get enough attention. In The Enchiridion, the 5th episode of Season 1, first aired April 19th, 2010, and the very first episode produced in the entire series. PB tells Finn that the book is destined for only the truest of heroes. That framing sets up the Enchiridion as a kind of cosmic aptitude test. The trials on Mount Cragdor are tests of character, not ability. Finn has to decide whether to kill a neutral ant during his final trial. He refuses. That refusal is what earns him the book. Now, whoever designed those trials knew what heroism looked like. Whoever constructed the Enchiridion as a test knew that the distinction between killing something that posed no threat and refusing to do so was the critical question. That sophisticated ethical reasoning embedded in an artifact that predates as we know it. Here's what makes this genuinely strange. The Enchiridion eventually turns out to also be a dimensional key. You can insert the 9 gems of power held by the monarchs of into the sword on its cover, and it tears open the multiverse. The Lich tries to use it for exactly this purpose in The Lich, the Season 4 finale that aired May 21st, 2012, and Finn destroys the book to stop him, which inadvertently creates the portal anyway. So the same object that tests whether you're worthy of being a hero also has the power to access the entire multiverse. Why would those two things be in the same book? The most satisfying answer I've been able to construct is this. Whoever created the Enchiridion understood that the power to access the multiverse should only be in the hands of someone who has demonstrated that they won't use power merely because they can. The refusal to kill the neutral ant isn't just a character test, it's the specific test that would identify someone whose relationship to power is one of restraint rather than exploitation. The dimensional key is hidden behind the hero test, because the hero test is the only reliable way to ensure the key reaches the right person. That's an elegant design philosophy. It also implies that the Enchiridion's creator was thinking at the scale of the multiverse. They weren't just writing a guidebook for adventurers. They were building a system to ensure that the person most likely to access the multiverse would be someone who understood that power should be restrained. Who thinks like that? The show gives you one category of being who demonstrably thinks at that scale: Prismo, the cosmic wish granters, the entities that manage the multiverse's organization. But Prismo operates from outside time, and the Enchiridion predates the show's present by enough that almost anything could have made it. There's another possibility that I find interesting, even though the show doesn't confirm it. What if the Enchiridion was created by someone who had seen the multiverse go wrong before? Someone who knew what happened when the wrong kind of person accessed dimensional travel and wanted to ensure that never happened again. That reading positions the Enchiridion as a response to a previous catastrophe, a preventive measure built by someone who understood the consequences of dimensional travel in the wrong hands. The hero test as a filter, designed by someone who had seen what happened when there was no filter. The show doesn't confirm any of this, but the mystery invites this kind of thinking, and I find that the stories we construct around unsolved mysteries often tell us as much about ourselves as they do about the thing we're trying to explain. Let me talk about something that I think is genuinely underappreciated as a mystery in Adventure Time fandom: the full nature of the Dead World system. The show establishes quite a lot about how the afterlife works. There are multiple dead worlds, numbered realms where the dead go based on factors we don't fully understand. We know from Sons of Mars, Season 4, Episode 14, that the 37th dead world exists, and that it's where Jake briefly ended up when he was accidentally sent there. We know from Together Again that this is where Finn initially ends up after his death, and that Jake has been assigned to a higher dead world with a more peaceful, elevated existence. The system has bureaucracy. There's an entity called Life that apparently manages assignments. There's a Mr. Fox who deals with past life quotients, whatever those are, and reincarnation logistics. But who built this system? Who decided that there would be 37 or more numbered dead worlds? Who determined the criteria by which souls are assigned? What is the relationship between the Dead World system and GOLB, between the Dead World system and Prismo's reality management? The show establishes the system's existence comprehensively enough to use it as a narrative tool. It doesn't establish the system's origin, and the absence of an origin is interesting because in Adventure Time's world, everything that exists was built by someone. The Citadel was built by Rix in an alternate show's mythology, but in this show's mythology was built by the collective infrastructure of cosmic order. The dead worlds feel like they should have a similar origin story. Something or someone constructed the framework by which death is organized. One fragment the show provides. In Sons of Mars, the reason Abraham Lincoln of Mars can substitute for Jake in the 37th dead world is that Lincoln offers his own soul as payment. The cosmic math works. The system accepts Lincoln's soul in exchange for Jake's. This implies the dead world system operates on something like exchange value, that souls have quantifiable worth that can be traded, which implies whoever built the system built it with specific economic logic. What's the economic logic of a soul exchange system built into the structure of death? What's the underlying philosophy, and who had the authority to implement it? These are genuinely open questions, and they point toward a mystery bigger than any individual mystery in the show: the full architecture of Adventure Time's universe. The show gives you pieces of that architecture: the catalyst comets, the Citadel, the Dead Worlds, Golb, Prismo's time room, but never a complete diagram of how these pieces connect to each other. The map of the universe that Adventure Time builds across its run is deliberately incomplete. I want to spend some time on something that connects this to the experience of watching the show unfold in real time, because there's a specific kind of mystery that's unique to long-running serialized fiction, the mystery that was set up and then not paid off, not because the show forgot about it, but because the show ended before it could reach the payoff. The most clear example of this in Adventure Time is Susan Strong's full arc. Susan is introduced in Season 1 and eventually revealed to be a human named Kara, who grew up on the islands, had an accident that caused severe brain damage and memory loss, and spent years believing she was a human tribe member. The island's miniseries restored her memories, her language, and her sense of herself. She and her childhood friend Frida decided to leave and have their own adventures, and then she mostly disappears from the narrative. Susan Strong, as a character, was clearly being built towards something substantial. The show spent enormous energy on her mystery, the multiple seasons of ambiguity about whether she was human, the slow reveals, the island's arc that gave her a complete and emotionally satisfying backstory. That's a lot of investment for a character whose subsequent story largely happens off-screen. What was Susan's life after the islands? Did she find what she was looking for? What was the shape of the adventures she and Frida had together? The show gave her a complete past, and then left her future entirely open in ways that feel like setup for something that never arrived. This might be the best example in the series of a mystery that was genuinely interrupted by the show's ending, rather than deliberately left open. The Islands miniseries felt like the beginning of a Susan Strong arc that would continue. The finale gave her a brief appearance. The specials didn't return to her in any substantial way. Whatever the show was building toward with Susan, whoever she was going to be in the world now that she'd recovered herself, we don't get to see it. There's a specific kind of grief in that, when a story you love ends before it's finished. The unfinished parts don't just become mysteries, they become spaces where you can feel the shape of the story that should have been there. You can almost see what Susan Strong's full arc would have looked like. You can feel the absence of it. That feeling is itself one of the things Adventure Time was always exploring. The shape of what's missing, the way absence defines as much as presence. The things we lose access to, that we can feel, even when we can't see them. There's a mystery embedded in the show's production history that I want to address, because it's the most honest mystery of all. What was Adventure Time planning that it didn't get to make? The show was confirmed to end after season 10 in September 2016. The finale aired September 3rd, 2018. That's nearly 2 years of production, knowing the endpoint. And in Adam Muto's interviews around the finale period, he's been candid that the writers used many of the final episodes to close minor character arcs, precisely because they knew they were running out of time. The finale itself, by his account, was designed to be less dense, by having the preceding episodes do more of the resolution work. What that implies, there were story ideas, character threads, and narrative possibilities that the team knew about and couldn't execute. The show's mythology is rich enough that there were almost certainly multiple arcs in development that got compressed, combined, or quietly set aside as the remaining episode count became clear. We know some of what was on the table from interviews and from the texture of the storytelling. The Betty arc clearly ran shorter than it might have in an expanded season count. The Peppermint Butler Dark Wizard storyline was developed more fully in the Wizard City Distant Lands special than in the main series, precisely because there hadn't been time in the main series. Sweet Pea's development as a character living with the Lich's inheritance felt like it was building towards something that the finale's compressed final chapter didn't fully arrive at. These are the mysteries of what Adventure Time would have been with more time. They're real mysteries in the sense that the answers exist somewhere in documents and storyboards and conversations that happened in the writer's room and then got set aside. The creative team knows what they were building toward. Most of us don't, and I find myself returning to this question, not with frustration, but with something closer to gratitude. The show ended. It ended well. It said something true and complete about Finn and Jake and Simon and Marceline and the world they all inhabited. And the questions it left open are the show's honest acknowledgement that OO is bigger than 10 seasons of 11-minute episodes could contain. OO was always bigger than the show. The show knew this. The mysteries are the proof. Let me close this section with the mystery that I find personally most haunting, and then we'll bring everything together. The mystery of what Finn's childhood was actually like. We know the outline. Joshua and Margaret adopted him as an infant. He grew up in the treehouse with Jake. They were raised together as brothers. The early seasons show us glimpses, the adventures of childhood, the early establishment of the heroism principle, the specific texture of how Finn and Jake relate to each other, but the specific texture of Finn's early childhood before the show begins, in the period when he was too young to have had the adventures we see in Season 1, is almost entirely invisible. We know he was found as an infant on a leaf pile, apparently having floated to shore on a raft. After the events that separated him from Martin, we know Joshua and Margaret raised him. We know he grew up knowing he was the only human in OO. What was it like to grow up knowing you were the last of your kind? The show addresses this in ways. Finn's arc in the Islands miniseries is partly about discovering that he isn't alone, that there are humans, that there was a community he was separated from, that his mother is alive and cares about him. The relief and grief of those discoveries is part of what makes the Islands arc work emotionally. But the experience of being the only human Finn knew himself to be, the experience of growing up different from everyone around him in the most fundamental possible way, that experience is referenced rather than explored. We know it shaped him. We know it produced the specific quality of his heroism, the need to prove himself, the investment in being good that goes beyond social expectation, because for Finn, being good is the primary way he establishes his right to belong in a world that contains no other version of himself. That psychology is legible in the show, but the specific childhood experiences that produced it, the specific moments of aloneness, the specific ways Jake and Joshua and Margaret helped him navigate being human in a world of magical creatures, the specific shape of his relationship to his own difference, those are invisible. The mystery of what it actually felt like to be young Finn in the years before the adventures is one the show couldn't answer directly, because it would have required telling a story about a child's interior life with an intimacy that the show's format doesn't quite allow. But it's a genuine mystery, and it's one that I think is worth sitting with, because the answer to it is probably part of the answer to why Finn grew up to be the person who couldn't not help people. The hero who can't not help people was once a boy who didn't quite fit, and the specific shape of how that boy navigated not fitting, that's a story I would have liked to see. The show gave us enough to understand it in broad strokes. The details remain in the space between episodes. Here's something I've been building toward that I want to say directly now. Adventure Time's unsolved mysteries are not failures of storytelling. They're features of a specific kind of storytelling philosophy that the show committed to from early in its run. Most long-form narratives operate on the assumption that questions raised by the story should eventually be answered by the story. This is a contractual relationship between the work and its audience. You introduce a mystery, you eventually provide resolution. The audience's engagement during the mystery phase is sustained by the promise of payoff. Adventure Time made a different contract. Its contract was, "We will give you a world that is real enough that it contains questions we can't answer, because real worlds contain questions that don't get answered. We will respect your intelligence by not pretending that every mystery has a neat resolution available. We will trust that you can love something partly for what it withholds." This is a genuinely unusual creative position for an animated series aimed at children and young adults. Most shows in that space operate on the reassuring premise that things can be understood if you pay close enough attention, that the world makes sense if you assemble the clues correctly. Adventure Time periodically offers that: the snail's possession, Shoko's ghost, the Jake tattoo, moments where patient attention is rewarded with revelation, but it also holds other things back permanently. Martin's crime, the Enchiridian's authorship, the full nature of GOLB, Sweet Pea's future. Not because the show was lazy or disorganized, but because these mysteries are more valuable open than closed. I want to dwell on Martin one more time, because I think his mystery is the most instructive case for understanding what the show is doing. If the show had revealed Martin's cosmic crime, had given us a specific, definable transgression, what would have happened? Probably one of two things. Either the crime would have been so severe that Martin becomes a pure villain, someone whose selfishness and cowardice are explained by something monstrous at his core, or the crime would have been sympathetic, even understandable, and Martin would have become a tragic figure whose abandonment of Finn makes a certain grim sense. Either resolution would have changed the fundamental nature of Finn's relationship to his father's abandonment. Either Martin is a monster, which means Finn's grief about him is relatively straightforward, or Martin is a victim of his own circumstances, which means Finn's grief is complicated by sympathy. By not answering, the show keeps the relationship exactly as ambiguous as real abandoned children's relationships to their parents tend to be. Martin might be terrible, he might be damaged, he might be both. He might have had reasons that, in some universe of understanding, make a certain sense. The show doesn't tell Finn, so Finn can't tell us. And we're left with the same quality of not knowing that characterizes the real experience of trying to understand a parent who wasn't there. That's the mystery doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Let me now address the mystery of Marceline's father, because it's one that gets resolved. We meet Hunson Abadir, we understand their relationship, but resolves in ways that leave important questions open. Hunson Abadir is the ruler of the Nightosphere. He's an ancient demon of extraordinary power. He's Marceline's father. He absorbed her soul at some point in her past. He has a complicated relationship with what it means to love someone. He clearly loves Marceline in some sense, but the love is expressed in ways that seem more like possession than care. What we don't know, how Marceline came to be, what's her mother's story, who was Marceline's mother, and what happened to her, the show never tells us. Marceline's origins, she's a half-demon, which implies a human or some other non-demonic parentage on her other side, are never explored. What we know about Marceline's early life is mostly what we learn from Simon and Marcy, Season 5, Episode 14, which shows her as a child in the immediate aftermath of the Mushroom War. She's already in the post-war world when we first see her childhood. Before that, the specific circumstances of her birth, her early relationship with Hunson, whatever life she had before she was alone in the ruins, is invisible. The closest we get to her origin is the implication that she was present during the Mushroom War itself, or was born shortly before it. Her half-demon nature means Hunson was involved in some way, but the specific shape of that involvement, the story of Marceline's parents, the nature of whatever brought a demon lord and a human woman together in circumstances that produced Marceline, that's one of the show's genuinely unresolved mysteries. And honestly, I think this one might have been left open deliberately because Marceline's story is most powerful when it begins with her alone. The show wants you to meet Marceline in medias res, already ancient, already complicated, already carrying centuries of loss and survival. Explaining how she came to be in full detail would require establishing a version of her that predates the version we know. The show trusted that Marceline's presence in the world, the fact that she exists and is who she is enough without complete genealogical accounting. But it's still a mystery. The mother whose absence shaped everything about Marceline's relationship to love and family. The earliest years of a life that lasted 1,000 years before we met it. There's a mystery I want to address that lives entirely in production history rather than in the show's text, because I think production mysteries are also part of the full picture of what Ooh left unexplained. Adventure Time was originally planned to have a more extended final chapter. The Distant Lands specials, BMO, Obsidian, Together Again, and Wizard City were part of how the team addressed what they knew they hadn't been able to complete in the main series. But even with those specials, there was clearly more on the table. The Simon Petrikov episode of the Fiona and Cake series, technically a part of that spin-off rather than the main series, or the original Distant Lands arc, continued to develop threads that the specials themselves hadn't closed. Betty's fate was given its full accounting there. Simon and Betty's relationship finally reached something like resolution. But the Fiona and Cake series also operated in a conceptual space that the main Adventure Time series could never have accessed. It brought in the fictional show within a show conceit. It worked with alternate universe versions of the characters. It did genuinely experimental things with the Adventure Time premise that required a distance from the main canon. What stories might the creative team tell about Ooh if they had another season, another mini-series? The Distant Lands format clearly still had space for the material the main series couldn't fit. The Fiona and Cake series opened up conceptual territory that hadn't been explored. Is there a version of the Adventure Time extended universe where Susan Strong gets her full arc, where Sweet Pea's future gets examined, where the human community's integration into O is shown rather than implied? Almost certainly yes. And the fact that those versions don't exist is a production mystery as much as a narrative one. The decisions that shaped what got made and what didn't, the negotiations between creative ambition and available time, between what the team wanted to tell and what the format could contain, those decisions are invisible to us as viewers. We see their effects, we don't see the conversations. The mystery of what Adventure Time would have been with more room is genuinely interesting, not in a way that diminishes what exists. What exists is extraordinary, but in a way that honors the creative team's ambition by acknowledging that the show they made was, in some senses, a compromise between what they envisioned and what was possible. Everything that exists in Ooh was a choice, and every choice involves things that were set aside. Let me do something unusual and talk about a mystery that isn't really a mystery in the traditional sense, not a question with a specific unknown answer, but that I think is the deepest mystery the show raised, and the one that matters most. What is Adventure Time actually about? I know that sounds like a strange way to frame a mystery, given that the show is about Finn and Jake having adventures in the land of Oo, a post-apocalyptic magical world built on the ruins of human civilization. The surface is clear, but if you've spent any time with the show's deeper architecture, and I mean really spent time, not just watching casually, but sitting with it, thinking about what it's reaching for, you start to notice that the show has multiple competing candidates for its central concern. It could be about grief, Simon's grief, Marceline's grief, Finn's grief about his father, the accumulated grief of a world that lost everything in the Mushroom War and built something new in the wreckage. Everything in Adventure Time happens in the aftermath of catastrophe. The show might be primarily an extended meditation on what life looks like after the worst possible thing has happened. It could be about growing up. Finn's arc from 12-year-old hero to adult with a prosthetic arm and a memorial tattoo for his brother. The show's willingness to track his development in real time. Jeremy Shadder's voice, literally changing as Finn ages, is one of the most unusual and truthful things a children's show has ever done. The show might be primarily about what it costs to become an adult. It could be about love, the Simon and Marceline relationship, the PB and Marceline relationship, the Finn and Jake relationship, the Jake and Lady Rainicorn relationship. The show has an extraordinary number of people trying to figure out how to love each other well, failing, trying again. Love in Adventure Time is consistently shown as something that takes more than good intentions. It takes time and honesty and the willingness to change. It could be about meaning making in an absurd universe. The Candy Kingdom, existing as a marvel of civilization on top of nuclear waste. The heroism principle persisting across apocalypse. Jake and Finn running through ruins like they're the most fun place in the world. The show might be an argument that meaning isn't found, it's made, and you can make it in the most unlikely circumstances. The honest answer is that Adventure Time is about all of these things simultaneously, in different proportions, in different episodes, and the fact that you can't reduce it to a single central concern is one of the things that makes it genuinely difficult to explain to someone who hasn't watched it. But the mystery I want to name is this: the show never fully resolves which of these concerns is ultimately primary. It doesn't prioritize. It holds them all in suspension, and in doing so, it remains genuinely open to the reader's experience. You bring your own central concern to it and find it reflected back. If you watched Adventure Time while grieving something, you found a show about grief. If you watched it while growing up, you found a show about growing up. If you watched it while falling in love, or losing love, or trying to figure out what love requires, you found a show about that. The show's openness to multiple interpretations isn't a flaw. It's the mechanism by which it reaches so many different people in so many different ways. And the mystery of what it's ultimately about is inseparable from the mystery of what you bring to it. That's the unsolved mystery at the center of Oo that no amount of research or analysis can resolve, because it lives in the space between the show and the person watching it, and that space is genuinely and permanently unmappable. Let me bring this toward a close with the mystery that I think is the most specific and the most haunting. After the Great Gum War, after Golb's defeat, after the finale's beautiful, quiet epilogue, what happened next? Not in the distant land sense, not the institutional answer, the personal one. Simon Petrikov, finally himself again, after 1,000 years as the Ice King, watching Betty fly away as Goal Betty, wanting her back, asking Prismo to retrieve her, Prismo giving him a waste basket with a basketball hoop, which is the show's beautifully absurd way of saying some things that are gone cannot be retrieved, not even by entities that can grant wishes, not even by love this profound. Simon moving forward anyway, building a new family with Marceline and PB, and the infant peppermint butler, and Gunter turned ice thing, and turtle princess, being Simon in a world where Betty is gone. What does that feel like from the inside? The show gives you the shape of it, but not the texture. You can see that Simon is rebuilding. You can see that he has people. You can see that the makeshift family he finds himself part of is real and warm and sufficient in the ways that matter. But the specific weight of being Simon Petrikov in the morning, waking up as yourself, remembering everything the Ice King couldn't remember, carrying the full knowledge of what the crown took and what Betty did to give you yourself back, that specific weight is yours to imagine. The show earned the right to leave it there, and here's what I keep coming back to. Simon spent 1,000 years not knowing what he'd lost. He lost Betty, and lost himself, and lost the memory of the loss simultaneously. In some terrible sense, the Ice King was protected from grief by the very damage that created him. Now Simon knows. He has himself back. He has all of his faculties. He can feel the full weight of everything that happened. That's not liberation without cost. That's the specific cost of being restored to yourself after you've been someone else for 1,000 years. You get yourself back, and you get to feel all of the grief that your damaged self couldn't feel. Whether that's worth it, whether the Simon who exists now is grateful for the restoration, or whether some part of him would have preferred the blissful ignorance of the Ice King's madness, is the mystery the show leaves perfectly, beautifully open. I don't think there's a right answer. I think that's the point. The land of Oo is full of these perfectly open mysteries, questions that matter, that have real stakes, that connect to real things about what it means to exist and to love and to lose and to continue, and that don't have clean resolutions, because clean resolutions would lie about the nature of the questions. We don't know what Martin's cosmic crime was. We don't know who wrote the Enchiridion. We don't know exactly what GOLB is at its deepest level. We don't know what Rosalind and Jay and Bonnie are doing in the pillow world right now. We don't know what Sweet Pea will eventually become. We don't know the full shape of what adult Finn's life looked like in the years between the finale and the specials. We don't know. And that not knowing, that specific quality of caring about questions that don't have accessible answers, that's what it feels like to love something the way we love Adventure Time. The mysteries of Oo are the shape of our attachment to it. They're the negative space of our investment. We care enough to want the answers, which means we care enough to feel the absence of them. And if you're feeling that absence right now, if these questions are sitting in you the way they sit in me, then the show did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made you care about a world that contains more than it can show you, and it trusted you to keep caring, even when the answers didn't come. Thank you for staying through all of this. Thank you for caring about the land of Oo the way I do. These are the kinds of videos I make because I can't stop thinking about this show. And knowing that someone out there is thinking about it with me, that matters. Subscribe if you haven't, and if you fall asleep with these mysteries still turning in your head, well, that's exactly what we were going for. Good night. The mysteries of Oo will be here tomorrow. I want to spend time on a set of mysteries that exist specifically at the intersection of the show's world building and its production history. because these are the mysteries that reveal the most about what Adventure Time was actually trying to do as a creative project. The Mushroom War is the most foundational mystery in the show. It's the event that produced Ooh. Everything in the show's world is downstream of the Great Mushroom War, the post-apocalyptic landscape, the absence of humans, the return of magic, the specific mutations and adaptations that produced the Candy Kingdom and the Fire Kingdom and the Ice Kingdom and every other strange corner of the world Finn and Jake inhabit. We know the war happened approximately 1,000 years before the main series. We know it involved nuclear weapons, the bomb craters, and the radiation signatures, and the specific physical transformation of the landscape all confirm this. We know that Marceline survived it as a child. We know that Simon Petrikov used the Ice Crown to protect himself and Marceline in its immediate aftermath. We know that the bomb that created the Lich was described as a mutagenic weapon that deployed biological and chemical agents in addition to its nuclear payload. What we don't know is who was fighting the war and why. Every time the show references the Mushroom War, it treats it as established historical fact rather than as a question to be explored. This is a deliberate choice. The war's causes and participants are never named. The geopolitical situation that led a civilization to destroy itself is never examined. The specific decision-making process that led someone to deploy weapons of mass destruction capable of ending most life on Earth that is permanently invisible. Why did the show make this choice? I think the answer is in Ward's description of the show's setting as Candyland on the surface and dark underneath. The Mushroom War is the permanent dark underneath. If you give the war a specific cause, if you name the countries, the political disputes, the chain of events, you historicize it. You make it into a specific thing that happened for specific reasons. By leaving the cause permanently unspecified, the show makes the war feel like any war, like the inevitable endpoint of any sufficiently developed civilization's capacity for self-destruction. The mystery of the Mushroom War's cause is actually the show's argument that the cause doesn't matter as much as the fact. Wars happen, civilizations destroy themselves. What matters is what you build in the aftermath. That's a heavy argument, and the show makes it by refusing to tell you what started the war in the first place. But it's still a mystery. Somewhere in the show's hypothetical history, there are specific people who made specific decisions that ended the world. We never know who they were. Let me address something that fans have speculated about extensively and that the show left entirely open: the relationship between Marceline's nature and the world's history. Marceline is a half-demon who is at least 1,000 years old. She survived the Mushroom War as a child. She became a vampire at some point after the war. The Stakes miniseries explains that she hunted vampires to protect the surviving humans and absorb their essence. The question that haunts me: where did the vampires come from? In Adventure Time's world, vampires clearly existed before the Mushroom War. Marceline didn't create vampirism in Ooh, she absorbed it. The vampires she hunted in the immediate post-war period were already vampires. They had their powers, they had their hunger. Were there vampires in the pre-war world? Were they a separate species that survived the apocalypse? Did the mutagenic effects of the war create vampires from pre-existing biological material? Or were vampires in Ooh specifically a post-apocalyptic phenomenon? Beings that emerged from the specific conditions of the post-war landscape? The Stakes miniseries gives us 5 specific vampires that Marceline defeated and absorbed, each with distinctive powers. These vampires, the Vampire King, the Empress, the Hierophant, the Fool, the Moon, feel like they have histories that predate Marceline's encounter with them. They feel like they came from somewhere, but we don't know where that somewhere is. The origin of vampirism in U is one of the show's unresolved biological mysteries, and given that Marceline's nature as a vampire is so central to who she is, her immortality, her specific powers, her relationship to blood, the mystery of where vampirism came from feels like a missing piece in understanding Marceline herself. Now, let me talk about the mystery that might be the most structurally important for the show's final chapters, but that gets the least attention. The mystery of what happened between Finn's birth and the beginning of the show. We know Finn was born on Hub Island. We know Martin was a hider there who fell in love with Minerva, and that men from his criminal past caught up with him, and that he fled with infant Finn, and that the Guardian injured him severely, and that baby Finn was separated from Martin and drifted to U on a raft and was found by Joshua and Margaret. The Adventure Time wiki notes that early storyboards for the island's arc included Martin sustaining a head injury from his encounter with the Guardian. This connects to the show's implication that Martin's memory problems might be neurological rather than purely characterological, that the damage the Guardian did to him might be part of why he can't clearly explain why he abandoned Finn. But here's the mystery that follows from this. What happened to Martin in the years between arriving in U and being imprisoned in the Citadel? He arrived in U at some point as a severely head-injured adult. He spent years, presumably, in the world of U before committing whatever cosmic crime landed him in the prison for beings whose existence threatened the universe. What was that period like? What did he do? How did he go from injured hider who accidentally separated from his infant son to cosmic criminal imprisoned for eternity? The gap between those two states is enormous, and the show never bridges it. Here's something that I want to say about all of these mysteries together, because I think there's a pattern worth naming. The mysteries I've been describing tonight all share a quality. They cluster around specific types of human experience. Martin's mystery is about parental failure and its origins. Minerva's mystery is about what parents know and don't know about each other and about their children. The Pillow World mystery is about the families we lose access to and what happens to them after we're gone. The mysteries around Simon and Betty are about love that gets interrupted before it can become what it would have been. Adventure Time's unsolved mysteries aren't random gaps in world building. They're specific absences that map onto specific human experiences of incompleteness and loss. The mystery of Martin's cosmic crime maps onto the experience of trying to understand a parent's failure without having access to their inner life. The mystery of the Enchiridion's author maps onto the experience of using tools and frameworks that you didn't create and can't trace to their origin. The mystery of Golb's nature maps onto the experience of trying to understand forces that exceed your capacity for comprehension. I don't think the show designed these specific mappings intentionally. I think they emerged from the team's genuine engagement with what it means to tell stories about loss and grief and incomprehensibility. When you're trying to be honest about those things, You end up producing mysteries that mirror the actual texture of human experience with them, and that's why the mysteries feel like they matter, even when they're never resolved, because they're not just world-building gaps, they're honest acknowledgements of the kind of not knowing that's a permanent feature of being alive. Let me talk about one last mystery before we really close, and it's a small one that I think has an outsized emotional weight. The mystery of Finn's bear hat. Finn's white bear hat is one of the most iconic design elements in animated television. It defines his visual identity immediately and completely. Every piece of Adventure Time merchandise features it. When you picture Finn, you picture the hat. We get a small piece of its history in Min and Marty. The show notes that Finn was wearing a stuffed bear as a child. Minerva herself has a white hat that resembles a bear. There's an implication in the Islands miniseries that Finn's hat was related to his mother's, that it carries some familial connection. Early storyboards apparently included a scene where Martin stole the stuffed bear before Finn was born, but the canonical origin of the hat, the specific story of how Finn came to wear it, what it meant to him as a child before he knew who his mother was, whether it was something he found or was given or constructed, is never fully established. This is a tiny mystery compared to Martin's cosmic crime or Golb's true nature, but there's something about it that feels important, precisely because of its smallness. The thing that defines Finn, visually, the first thing you see when you look at him, has a partially obscured origin. The most visible element of who he is carries a history that isn't fully accessible. That's a very Adventure Time way to handle identity. The thing that marks you as recognizably yourself contains mysteries that you can't completely account for. And that, I think, is what all of these mysteries are ultimately about: identity, the specific question of who we are and how we became that way, and what we can and can't know about our own origins. Finn can't fully account for the bear hat. He also can't fully account for why he can't not help people, or why his father was who he was, or what it means that he's a reincarnation of a cosmic comet. His identity contains mysteries even to himself. Ours do too. That's not a flaw. That's just what having an identity is like. The land of Oo is full of mysteries, because the people who inhabit it are full of mysteries, and the people watching it are full of mysteries. And the most honest thing a show can do is refuse to resolve the things that shouldn't be resolved. Refuse to pretend that the world makes complete sense. Refuse to offer clean answers where the actual answer is, we don't know, and that's okay. And you can love things and people and worlds without knowing everything about them. Adventure Time offered that refusal as a gift, and I think most of us, even when we're frustrated by the unanswered questions, know on some level that it's the right gift, that the questions are part of what makes the show worth returning to, that the mysteries are part of what makes O feel real. The land of O is real in the way that the places we love are real, not because it exists outside a screen, but because we've been inside it long enough to care about what we don't know about it, and caring about what you don't know is one of the most honest forms of love. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for caring about these questions with me. The mysteries of Oo are still out there, and I'll be thinking about them for a long time yet. Good night. I want to circle back to something I said early in this script about Minerva Campbell, because I think I understated it, and it's one of the mysteries that sits with me most persistently. Minerva exists as a digital consciousness spread across hundreds of robots. She's a mother who died biologically to save her people. The virus that killed most of the helpers was what forced her to upload her consciousness to the network, and now exists in a form that can take care of people but can never be touched. She can project herself on screens. She can speak through robots. She can be present in a meaningful sense, but she's experienced through interface, not through physical reality. Her reunion with Finn happens in that form. She holds him by connecting their minds through a VR headset. She says goodbye to him as his ship moves out of range, the signal fading as the distance grows, and there's a moment where her projected face is still speaking, but Finn can no longer hear her. That image, the mother still talking to her son, as the connection cuts out, not knowing if her last words reached him. This is not a mystery in the traditional sense. We know what the show does here. We see the moment. We understand what it means. But the emotional residue of that moment connects to a mystery the show leaves genuinely open. Does Minerva know what Finn's full life looked like? Does she ever find out? We know from the finale's epilogue that the humans from Founders Island apparently eventually made their way to Oo. We know from the Simon Petrikov episode in Fiona and Cake that there's a floating human city with advanced technology in the world of the show's future. Minerva was presumably involved in that transition. She was the intelligence managing Founders Island, and her robots and her consciousness would have been part of however the island community prepared to venture out into the world. But the show never shows us Minerva integrating into the larger world of Oo. We never see her learning about what Finn's life was like after he left the island. We never see her finding out about the arm. Does she know her son lost his arm, reaching for the father who abandoned them both? We never see her response to knowing that Martin eventually dissolved into cosmic energy rather than returning to accountability. The relationship between Finn and his mother after the island's arc is one of the great off-screen mysteries of the show's final chapters. The reunion was emotionally complete. The aftermath is invisible. And here's what makes this mystery particularly sharp. Minerva's whole existence after the pandemic was devoted to taking care of people. She gave up her biological form to be present for a community that needed her. She gave up the possibility of holding her son to remain as a guardian for the people on the island. That sacrifice was made without knowing if Finn was alive, without knowing if she'd ever see him again. When she did see him, when Finn arrived at the island and they reunited, she learned that her sacrifice had been in some sense for the right thing. Finn became someone worth sacrificing for. The world she was afraid of made him good, but the full weight of that knowledge, the experience of learning who your child became in the years you weren't there, is something the show can only gesture at. The reunion is too busy with narrative necessity to fully contain the emotional enormity of a mother seeing her absent son for the first time. What did Minerva think and feel in the years after Finn left? What was it like to have met him, to know he existed and was good, and then to have him sail away into the world she'd been managing as a threat? The show doesn't tell us. And the not telling is, I think, an honest acknowledgement that some things are too intimate and too specific to be adequately represented in 11-minute episodes or even in a mini-series. Some of what Minerva experienced belongs to her. This connects to what I was saying earlier about the show's central mystery being about identity. Minerva's experience of motherhood, of having a child she never got to raise, of meeting him when he was almost grown, of letting him go again, that experience is hers in a way that the show can gesture toward but can't fully contain. And that gesture, that acknowledgement that some interior experiences can't be fully shown, is itself an act of respect for the character's interiority. Minerva gets to have an experience that belongs to her, that we can understand in outline but can't fully access. That's not the show failing to tell us something. That's the show trusting that Minerva is a full person, even in the spaces the narrative doesn't illuminate. Let me address something I haven't touched yet: the mystery of Peppermint Butler's origins. We've been through the basic structure of this mystery before. Across the show's run, Peppermint Butler accumulates evidence that he's significantly older and more magically capable than he appears. He appears as a child in the vault. He negotiates with death in Death in Bloom. He performs dark magic rituals. He makes threats that only someone with genuine power behind them could make credible. And the Wizard City Distant Lands special eventually confirms that he had a complete parallel identity as a powerful dark wizard. But there's a more specific question within this that I want to pull out. How did a candy person created by Princess Bubblegum become a dark wizard? PB created the Candy People. She's a scientist queen who built a civilization from candy biomass. The people she creates are in some fundamental sense her constructions, biological entities that she manufactured rather than organisms that emerged from evolutionary processes. And Peppermint Butler is one of her creations. But Peppermint Butler developed powers that PB didn't build into him. He accumulated knowledge that PB apparently didn't know he was accumulating. He became something that exceeded his design parameters by a significant margin. Either PB designed capabilities into him that she hasn't disclosed, making his dark wizard identity a secret project that she deliberately left unacknowledged, or Peppermint Butler developed beyond his design through some process that PB didn't anticipate. Both options are fascinating. If PB designed him with those capabilities, then Peppermint Butler is a secret weapon she built into her household and has been maintaining for centuries without ever acknowledging. If he developed beyond his design, then PB's understanding of what she can create is genuinely limited. She doesn't fully understand the long-term developmental trajectories of the beings she makes. The show never tells you which it is. The Wizard City special treats Peppermint Butler's past power as something that was destroyed and that he has to rebuild through legitimate training. It doesn't examine how he acquired that power in the first place. The mystery of Peppermint Butler's origin as a dark wizard, the specific process by which a candy person became a feared practitioner of dark magic, remains entirely open. And here's what I find most interesting about this mystery. It's genuinely not clear whether PB knows the answer, whether she knows what Peppermint Butler was and how he became it. Given everything we know about PB's surveillance of her kingdom and her knowledge of her citizens, she might well have known, or she might have been genuinely unaware that her most trusted servant had a whole other life happening in the margins of his service to her. The mystery of what PB knows about Peppermint Butler is nested inside the mystery of Peppermint Butler's origins, and neither one has an answer. I want to spend a moment on a mystery that isn't usually framed as a mystery, but that I think genuinely is one. The mystery of what Jake's relationship with Lady Rainicorn was really like. Jake and Lady Rainicorn are one of the great love stories of the show. Their relationship is characterized by warmth, playfulness, genuine intimacy, and the specific humor of Jake being able to understand Lady's Korean, but most of the human characters around him not being able to. They have children together. they're clearly deeply committed to each other, but we almost never see inside the relationship. Jake talks about Lady. Lady appears in episodes where she's relevant. They're dynamic when they're alone together. The texture of what their partnership was actually like from the inside is almost entirely invisible to us. Jake's letter to Lady Rainicorn, which Shermie and Beth find in the finale's flash forward, written, presumably, as Jake was approaching the end of his life, or after he knew he was dying, is one of the most moving details in the whole show. A love letter, preserved as an artifact, found by strangers in a future that neither Jake nor Lady could have fully imagined. What was in that letter, the show doesn't tell us. The content of Jake's final communication to the love of his life is permanently invisible. That choice to show us the letter but not its contents is one of the most powerful pieces of deliberate restraint in the show's entire run. Some things are private, some things belong to the people inside them. Jake's last words to Lady Rainicorn don't belong to us, but their invisibility makes them a mystery we can't solve and shouldn't want to solve, because the best mysteries are the ones that point towards something real and private and irreducibly specific to the people who inhabited it. The letter is there. We can see that it exists. We can't read it. That's perfect. That's exactly right. And I think that's the best note to close on. The mystery that is most deliberately, most carefully preserved. The thing the show showed you and then refused to reveal. The content of a dog's love letter to a rainbow unicorn, written at the end of a life that was genuinely extraordinary. Whatever Jake wrote to Lady Rainicorn is what Jake wanted to say to Lady Rainicorn. It belongs to them. The mystery of its content is the mystery of their relationship's interior, and that interior is theirs. Adventure Time was always doing this, showing you the outside of things and trusting you to feel the inside through the outside. The letter is on the outside, the love is on the inside. You don't need to read the letter to feel the love. The unsolved mysteries of OO are the outside of something, what they point toward, the specific weight of incompleteness, the shape of caring about things you can't fully access, the experience of loving a world that contains more than it shows. That's on the inside. You don't need all the answers to feel what the show was reaching for. The mysteries are the outside. The feeling is the inside. And the feeling, I think, is what we're all really looking for when we come back to Adventure Time again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending this time with these questions. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment with the mystery that sits with you most. And whenever you need a place to think about things that don't resolve cleanly, come back here. Good night. There's one more mystery I need to address before this is complete. It's the one that shows up when you step back from the individual questions and look at the shape of all of them together. Why does Adventure Time refuse to explain things? I've been making the argument throughout this script that the unexplained things are deliberate creative choices, that the show built its mysteries carefully and left them open for good reasons. But I want to push on that claim a little, because I think the full answer is more complicated. Some of Adventure Time's mysteries are absolutely deliberate. The Enchiridian's authorship, for example. The show had ample opportunity across 10 seasons to establish where the book came from. It didn't. That's a choice. Martin's Cosmic Crime is similar. The Islands miniseries gave the writers the perfect chance to name it, and they chose not to. These are mystery by design. But some of the show's unanswered questions feel more like the result of a creative process that was generating story faster than it could organize it. The exquisite corpse writing process that the show reportedly used in some form produced material that accumulated genuine coherence, but also genuine loose ends. When writers build on each other's work without seeing the full picture, some things get set up without being paid off. Some threads get started and then get superseded by other threads. Sweet Pea's future, for instance, feels less like a deliberate mystery and more like a thread that the show started and then ran out of time to complete. The show was building towards something with that character, the Lich's consciousness in a child's body, growing up, becoming something, and the finale didn't have room to complete that building. The honest answer to why does Adventure Time refuse to explain things is probably sometimes by design, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by the genuine creative chaos of making hundreds of episodes of television over 8 years with a rotating cast of writers and storyboard artists. But here's what I find remarkable. The distinction between those categories mostly doesn't matter when you're watching the show. The deliberate mysteries and the structural loose ends produce the same effect in the viewer. The sense that Ooh is larger than the show, that there's more to this world than what's visible, that the story being told is happening inside a larger story that we don't have full access to. That effect is real, regardless of whether it was produced by design or by necessity. And I think the team, especially in the later seasons, was aware of this. They were aware that the show's accumulated mysteries were part of its distinctive texture, that the feeling of a world bigger than the story was one of the things people loved about it, and they were conscious of that in the choices they made about what to explain and what to leave open. Adam Muto has said in interviews that part of the finale's design was to not over-explain, to trust the audience, to sit with ambiguity. That's a design choice made at the level of the whole show's final chapter, not just individual episodes. The team chose, collectively, to preserve the show's characteristic openness, even as they brought it toward conclusion. The result is a show that ends without fully closing, that completes its central emotional arcs. Simon and Betty, Finn and Jake, Marceline and PB, while leaving the world itself genuinely and permanently open. The world of Ooh continues beyond the show's frame. The mysteries continue beyond the last episode. And that continuation, the sense that Ooh exists beyond what we've been shown, is what keeps the show alive in the minds of everyone who loves it. I've been rewatching certain episodes for this video in a way that I always do when I'm building something like this, just letting them run at 2 a.m. while I make notes. And there's something specific that keeps happening when I watch I Remember You lately, something that connects to everything we've been talking about. In that episode, the Ice King doesn't know who he is. He has the evidence of who he was, Simon's journal pages, but can't read that evidence clearly because the crown has damaged his ability to make meaning from his own history. He holds the clues to his own identity, and they're meaningless to him. And I keep thinking that's what all of Adventure Time's mysteries feel like from the inside of the show. The show holds all the clues, the evidence is there, but the meaning, the full significance of why Martin's crime wasn't named, why the Enchiridion's author is obscured, why Golb's nature is only partially defined, that meaning is something we have to construct from the outside. We're reading Simon's journal pages from a position the Ice King can't occupy. We can see more than the characters can. We're outside the frame with access to multiple episodes and seasons and production histories. And even from that position, some things remain genuinely mysterious, which means the mysteries aren't just about what the characters don't know. They're about what we don't know, even with all the access we have. They're built into the structure of the world at a level that exceeds any viewer's capacity to fully resolve them. That's a specific kind of storytelling achievement. It's not just that the show doesn't tell you certain things. It's that the things it doesn't tell you are things that genuinely can't be told, that are constitutively beyond the frame of any possible telling. The Mushroom War's causes live in a history the show's world doesn't have access to. The Enchiridion's author died in a past that precedes the show's timeline. Martin's full story lives in the interior of a person who may not fully know it himself. Golb's nature exists at a level of abstraction that language can approach, but not contain. These aren't omissions, they're limits. The limits of what any story about a world can show about that world. And acknowledging those limits, building them into the structure of the show, rather than papering over them, is one of the most honest things Adventure Time ever did. I keep coming back to this point about honesty because I think it's the key to why the mysteries feel meaningful rather than frustrating. The show could have made up answers. It could have invented cosmological explanations, backstories for Martin, origin myths for the Enchiridion, a full account of Golb's nature. It had 10 seasons to do all of that. It chose not to, because the invented answer is always smaller than the mystery it replaces. The mystery of Martin's cosmic crime is, right now, as large as it needs to be, large enough to contain everything about parental failure and absence and the specific horror of not knowing why someone became who they are. A named crime would reduce that to something specific and limited. The show understood this. It protected its mysteries by not solving them, and the mysteries, in turn, protected the show from the flatness that complete explanations produce. So here we are at the end of a very long night with a list of questions that are still questions and a sense of a world that is still larger than what we've been shown. Martin Mertens committed a cosmic crime and we'll never know what it was. The Enchiridion was written by someone we'll never meet. Golb is something we'll never fully understand. Rosalind and Jay and Bonnie are in the pillow world having lives we'll never see. Sweet Pea will become someone we'll never witness. Jake wrote Lady Rainicorn a letter whose contents we'll never read. And Ooh is still out there. In the flash forward at the end of Come Along With Me, Shermie and Beth are running through it with the same joy that Finn and Jake brought to it. The adventure continues. The mysteries continue inside it. And we, on this side of the screen, are left with the particular kind of love that survives not knowing, the love that doesn't require complete understanding, the love that can exist inside a world larger than what it can see. That's what the show was always teaching us. You don't need the whole picture to love something, you just need enough of it to care. The mysteries of Ooh are enough. They've always been enough. Thank you for spending tonight with me on this. Subscribe if you haven't. It genuinely helps us keep making things like this. And leave a comment with the mystery that matters most to you, because I want to know which question has been keeping you up at night. Good night. The mysteries of Ooh will be here tomorrow. They'll be here for a long time yet. One more thing before we're done tonight, because there's a mystery I've been circling around this entire script without naming it directly, and it's the one that I think gives all the others their weight. The mystery of what you'll carry with you after this. Every person who loves Adventure Time carries specific things from it that nobody else carries in exactly the same way. The specific episode that broke you open, the specific character whose arc mirrors something in your own life, the specific mystery that you've thought about most, that lives in you as a question you return to without being able to let go. For some of you, it's Martin. For some of you, it's Marceline's mother. For some of you, it's Rosalinnen and the Pillow World family. For some of you, it's the question of what the Enchiridion was really for and who could have built something like that. For me, lately, it's the Jake letter. That letter, sitting in the ruins of the treehouse, preserved through decades, waiting for Shermie and Beth to find it. The love letter that survived everything, that we'll never get to read. I think about that letter more than I think about most of the show's explicit content. I think about the fact that someone, Jake, felt enough about Lady Rainicorn that what he wanted to say to her at the end of his life deserved to be put in writing and preserved. I think about Lady reading it, whatever she felt. I think about the letter outlasting both of them, sitting in the ruins of a house that grew from Shoko's bones, containing words that belonged to two people who loved each other. And the mystery isn't really the content of the letter. The mystery is the love itself. The specific love between a magical dog and a rainbow unicorn that produced a letter worth preserving for decades. That love is one of the real things in Adventure Time, one of the genuinely real things, the mystery of love, of what it feels like from the inside, what it costs, what it leaves behind, is the mystery that runs under all the others. Martin abandoned Finn, and the question of whether he loved Finn is permanently complicated. Minerva uploaded her consciousness to save people, and the question of what that sacrifice felt like is permanently private. Simon spent 1,000 years forgetting Betty, and the question of whether the Ice King somehow carried the shape of her, even when he couldn't remember her name, is permanently moving. Love in Adventure Time is always mysterious, not because the show makes it mysterious artificially, but because love itself is mysterious. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't resolve cleanly. It persists in forms that the people who feel it can't always account for. The Jake letter is the emblem of all of this. Visible, real, preserved, and permanently unreadable. That's where we end tonight, at the edge of something genuine and permanently open. The land of Oo holds its mysteries, and the mysteries hold everything worth knowing about the show, and maybe about us. Thank you, truly. Good night. Subscribe, leave a comment, come back. The mysteries of Oo are still out there.